A current WWE star has turned down AEW. We're going to talk about that plus so much more right here on the Ango Show. Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Ango Show. I want to kick things off with WWE SmackDown. This past week, WWE made a major change to SmackDown, and for some people, you may not care about this, but this is something that I truly want to see if it changes anything for the show moving forward. Now, we often hear about pro wrestling fatigue, and typically every year when this is being brought up, it's typically after WrestleMania, right? Especially this year's WrestleMania, there was just so much greatness going into it, and then it kind of, you got to start the new storylines. You got to start the new long-form storytelling immediately after, and sometimes maybe things don't seem as much of a big deal because there's a lot of smaller elements that are building and building and building up over time. Now, this past week, WWE had a phenomenal week. Raw was incredible. It was probably the best Raw of the year. But then what was really crazy about this episode of Raw was that we ended it with the surprise of the Wyatt Six. Great. NXT, another great episode of NXT television, and then obviously having TNA involved even added more interest. NXT overall, the interest, the momentum seems to be incredibly up. And then we get to SmackDown where we have the Jacob Fatu joining the Bloodline, another great element of surprise, another great episode. Carmelo Hayes pinning Randy Orton. It's just things like this. Overall, people felt like SmackDown was a very, very good episode, and a lot of people collectively agree that this week for WWE was just one of the best weeks this year. Now, with that being said, we need to discuss the change, which is that WWE has promoted one of their writers as the new lead writer for SmackDown. And you might be wondering, why does this matter? Well, if WWE's television has been this good, WWE obviously plans things long term. Obviously, WWE making this change just a few months before SmackDown moves TV networks, there's got to be a reason for it. Now, why did WWE make this change? Not necessarily sure, but a lot of people are going to be paying attention to this because technically speaking, Triple H is the head of creative, but having a lead SmackDown writer, how much change will we see? Maybe none, maybe a lot. It's something to pay attention to. Now, John Swikota, has been promoted as the lead writer for SmackDown. A lot of people are talking about this. I know Meltzer's talking about this too, saying that he didn't really have much added to SmackDown because these were all long-term plans. I don't know if that remains to be the case, but anytime a company makes changes to whoever the lead writer is for the show, I think it's important that we continue to watch these shows. Are there any differences that we're seeing in the way the show is being written? Because if it is being written poorly, then I think a lot of people will point their fingers at the lead writer. Some people just overall look at Triple H, but you got to remember Triple H does have a writing team. He's got agents, he's got producers, and then obviously the talent themselves are part of this. So I hope it works out. I think this is going to be really cool to see if we notice any changes with SmackDown moving forward, but I do think it was important to bring it up, especially because when you look at WWE's overall production, when we went from Kevin Dunn to Lee Fitting, it was very quick for us to notice changes, right? And I think that same belief system has to be carried over into the writing of the shows themselves. Now I want to talk about Nick Khan because WWE did in fact this major announcements. They had it. This major announcement came out, and it's huge because WWE is headed to Indianapolis, and they did come to an agreement with the sports authority over there. And WrestleMania, Royal Rumble, SummerSlam, it's all happening. And we talked about the other day from WrestleVotes, but obviously when we factor in WWE officially making the announcement, there's two things that you need to know. WWE is yet again confirming future 2 nights of SummerSlam. So last time we heard about that, there was a lot of people pushing the narrative that 2-night SummerSlam would actually be happening because of the fact that WWE didn't give Minneapolis a WrestleMania, and they felt like that would be kind of a thing. No, WWE is sticking to 2-night SummerSlam, 2 nights of WrestleMania. At this point, God knows what else they're going to do. But they did make the announcement that this new partnership, 3 stadium events, And not only just the stadium events, but also Raw, SmackDown, NXT, and WWE live events will also happen across Indiana. This is something where, guys, WWE is getting paid to do this, and this really falls from the vision of Nick Khan. And when we talked about something similar of this, it was about WWE going global and WWE being international and having that footprint everywhere. But it looks like Nick Khan and the WWE are getting to a point where they want pretty much every city to buy their way into having access to these events. Now, some people think that is kind of stupid, but I think what you need to understand is that when WWE is getting paid from these committees or these groups to bring a WrestleMania or a SummerSlam or Royal Rumble, whatever it may be, that is because WWE is in turn helping the overall economic system for that city or for that state or for that country. The tourism is unbelievable. And I know firsthand, just when SummerSlam came to Detroit, a lot of people flew to Detroit for it. I was talking to a lot of people who maybe came from the UK, maybe they came from New York or from Florida or whatever it may be, and they typically would not come to Detroit if it wasn't for SummerSlam. So they come to Detroit, they're getting hotels, they're getting transportation, they're getting food, they're going to events, they're going to do all of these different things, and in turn it actually helps the city. So WWE doing more of this, it just makes a lot of sense. It's a benefit for both. It's a benefit for WWE because they get money. It's a benefit for the fans because they get these big time events in areas that they want. And now Nick Khan is showing us it's not just international, but they are doing it domestic. And then also it's a good thing for wrestling in general, because whenever companies or countries or cities or states are coming together and saying, hey, we want this event, that's a good look for other wrestling companies. They should aspire to have the same thing being applied to them. So we'll see if other companies could create that demand. Also, that leads us to our final topic. Tony Khan he hasn't said anything publicly on this, so obviously I don't want to point fingers at Tony Khan. It seems like Dave Meltzer has been talking a lot about this. It seems a lot of dirt sheets have been running with the report that Kayla Braxton is heading to AEW, and that's obviously not true. I said it in my other video. I said, listen, don't ever get it twisted. Nothing is impossible. I just don't think she's leaving WWE for AEW, right? Kayla Braxton is now on Twitter saying, the support from you guys has been overwhelming. I am so thankful for you, but I did want to make one thing clear as I enter my final week in WWE. If I wanted to keep working in wrestling, I wouldn't be walking away from the largest wrestling company in the world. Nice try, Rumor Weeds. Now, this is the final week for Kayla Braxton in WWE, and it looks like she'll be venturing off into something new. And again, I said that this is not Tony Khan's fault, okay? Definitely not Tony Khan's fault. It's important that you guys know that it's not Tony Khan's fault. Tony Khan wasn't pushing a narrative. Tony Khan wasn't speaking publicly about Kayla Braxton coming to AEW, but it seems a lot of other people have been. A lot of Dave Meltzer mentioned, the possible talks and stuff like that. People are running with it and engagement farming with it. But it is important to acknowledge that Kayla Braxton is shutting down those rumors. I think a lot of people thought that maybe she would be going there. And I think there was a lot of criticism for Dave Meltzer because he was talking about how WWE has Kathy Kelly and, like they don't need Kayla as much. And it was just a really weird thing. And it's a very uncomfortable thing to read because now it starts to look like he's just speculating on these types of things. Ladies and gentlemen, that's not how the world works. I'm not saying Kayla Braxton is never going to AEW. I always think anything and everything is a possibility in pro wrestling, but I'm not going to speculate on it. And please don't use my speculation on something or my fandom as a reason to, to push your narrative, okay? At the end of the day, it is what it is. But Kayla is staying in WWE for this final week, and she doesn't appear to go to AEW, and I'm glad she shut it down.